Hey there! While wandering around on Steam one day, I found this magical game that sounded like everything I ever wanted called Strange Horticulture. It's partly shopkeeping, partly occult mystery, and partly the joy of identifying plants and petting a cat. I can't recommend it enough, and I knew I had to do a project for this. Of course, I decided to make the window full of plants. It's where you spend most of the game, looking in your book to identify plants, creating labels for them, rearranging them, and watering them. I've been experimenting with gouache lately, and this will be my third gouache piece. I'm still learning, so please let me know if you have any tips and tricks to share. Most of my art is 3D, so I'm very much a novice when it comes to drawing and painting. I'm going to be painting the greenhouse windows during one of the rainy days. I loved rainy days in the shop, with the soft and solemn music and the sound of rain and thunder. I will admit, sometimes I just left the game running so I could listen to it. This whole project, I was racking my brains, trying to think of how I was going to find the music that feels like the game music, so I wouldn't face any copyright issues. Finally, I decided to research the music of the game and see if there was a contact that I could beg for a license, since nothing I found was coming even close. To my great surprise, I found an article talking about how Bad Viking, the game developers, used royalty-free music in the game. A few links later, and I found the link to purchase the music. I felt really challenged trying to paint this background. I went over the sky and some of the trees quite a few times, trying to make sure they looked close to the game. I kept getting values wrong, and trees either stood out too much or too little. After much painting and repainting, I finally had something that felt good enough. The raindrops were also a bit harder than I anticipated. I tried using my ruler to make sure things were at the proper angle and all at the same angle, but wow, that was not easy. I think now I understand why people have those little angle measures. To make sure I got all the window frames perfectly spaced and even, I used washi tape to mark them out. This is where it went downhill. I've seen people use washi tape like this on their paintings to get clean lines, but I must have had the wrong tape because it ripped my background. I took a moment to grieve, and then I took a hard look to see if I had to scrap the whole thing or if it could somehow be salvaged. I couldn't get the paper to stick back down, but I took a look at the game and there were some plants hanging from the top. Perfect. Just a little artistic license to make them bigger, and voila! You can't even see the rips. Crisis averted. I learned my lesson and used a tiny pencil line to freehand the horizontal lines. I painted a whole bunch more shadowy leaves of various kinds, which was a lot of fun. I've been watching and reading a lot of tutorials on painting in general, and learning more about brush shapes. I honestly didn't realize how important brush shapes really were until I started trying to paint on flat surfaces. If you paint, do you have a favorite brush? I'm slowly expanding my collection. There was a bit of bleeding on my window frames under the tape, but luckily it was a happy accident. As you can see in the game, the windows aren't cleaned too much, and there's some kind of algae, mold, corrosion happening on the frames. Half of my work was done for me since the paint bleed mimics that pattern. I touched up the rest of the frames to ensure maximum grunge. Once everything was done, I sealed it all with Jacquard Dorland's wax. Time for shelving! I had the right wood for the job, but not really the right hardware. I thought I had some brads lying around that I could hammer through the back and into the shelves to hold it all in place, but I didn't have any. I did, however, have these screws. I made a test piece to see if the screw would split the shelf, and it seemed fine as long as I drilled some pilot holes, so that's what we're gonna go with. Note to self, if you get sawdust on wax, it sticks. I spent a lot of time brushing little wood bits off of the wax with a soft paintbrush to get things clean again. One of my favorite things in the game was rearranging my plant shelves. I had grouped them by use, by color, whether their identities were verified or not, lots of moving things around for optimal placement, which I never achieved, but that's beside the point. I wanted the same fun with this little diorama, so I carved out holes in the shelves to hide some rare earth magnets so I'll be able to move my plants around to my heart's content. I kept thinking to myself, this is basically just a really time-intensive fidget toy. It's a good thing that I love plants and I love fidgeting. Totally worth it. I had to be very careful to make sure all the magnets were facing the same way. Otherwise, some of my plants would stay, some would only stay in certain spots, and some would yeet themselves into oblivion. I painted the shelves a bluish gray, and then I realized they shouldn't be bluish gray, so I painted them grayish instead. Is that a perfect match to the game? Nope. Is that okay? I'm going to make the executive decision that, yes, it is okay. Now for the part I've been waiting for, all the little tiny pots and plants. There are 77 plants in the game, but I just picked my favorite 11 based on the following very scientific criteria. 1. It is cool. 2. The pot is cool. 3. It looks cool with the other plants and pots. Very, very scientific criteria. I also have a few extra magnet slots on the shelves, so maybe I'll make some more later too. To get the basic pot shapes, I had a couple techniques. I have this acrylic square that's used for stamping, and I used that to roll out some of the more squared off pots with flat walls. For pots with round bodies, I smushed them onto some of my ball tools. The part I struggled with the most was getting them to be even, especially as I made room for the magnets in the bottoms. You'll see a lot of the pots have a slight lean to them, or they're not perfectly symmetrical. I've seen these itty-bitty little pottery wheels online before, and I seriously debated learning how to throw miniature pots for this project, but ultimately decided that the slightly wonky look was okay for now. I will probably get one of the pottery wheels in the future, though. I also decided to make the little watering can. It was such a fun part of the game to water the plants, and it was an obvious choice for this project. I made a little trash can shape to start, and used my ball tool to shape the little half-moon cover, and gave it a bake. I used my favorite bronze wire to create the handles, and attached a spout while singing, "I'm a Little Teapot." I left the bottom open for the magnet to be installed later, and gave it another bake. I made a fridge magnet once as a gift, and I baked the magnets in place. Don't be me. Magnets apparently lose their strength when exposed to high temperatures, especially for prolonged periods. By the time I got it out of the oven, the magnets wouldn't even stick to the fridge. I had to pry them out and replace them. I learned my lesson though, and I pulled all the magnets out of the pots and watering can until I was sure all the baking was done. Plant time! I'll read what the Strange Book of Plants has to say about each of these lovely little botanicals as we go. We're starting with the Elderphinium. The petals of this flower can be brewed to create an antidote to Dendra's miasma, a deadly poison that causes the blood to slowly turn black, eventually resulting in a painful death. It has an intoxicating scent, similar to that of Solomon's scepter. I decided to make this plant for 2 reasons. First, it's the first plant in alphabetical order, and second, I thought it would be smart to make the antidote plant before the poison plant. Yes, this gray is the exact same color as Super Sculpey, but it looks so much more polished when it's painted. I also used my test shelf and an extra magnet to make a painting stand. It worked sometimes, but other times the pot just slid around. The art in this game is so lovely and has these delicate gradients. I haven't been great at gradients in the past, so I thought this would be a fun challenge. My paintbrush had a different idea for a challenge, and came apart while I was washing it. But at least now I have +1 to my fishing skill. Surprisingly, the gold wires took to the paint pretty well. I was worried I'd need to find a way to sand them, but 2 coats did it. Just a bit of purple for the anthers, at least I'm assuming they're anthers, and the Elderphinium is done. Embersoul. Embersoul is thought to have protective properties. It is sometimes given as an offering to various deities in return for sanctuary. It produces flowers with many petals. Watch out for the leaves, they're razor sharp. I can attest to that. After I baked the little leaves, they were definitely sharp, and I gave myself a good poke. One of the reasons I love this plant is the teal combined with the orange. It's a really striking combo to me, and one that I always love. Farmer's Worry, a spongy mushroom with potent abilities, only safe to consume in small quantities. Grants strength for short periods at the expense of severe fatigue once the effect has worn off. I made each of the little caps and stems separately with the intention of sticking them all in the pot with a blob of superglue. Since the stems taper a lot, it seemed like the best chance of success. I was mostly right. I did manage to glue my fingers together at least once, though. I kept testing the structure to make sure it wasn't pushing against the background too much. The color scheme was really simple. I noticed there isn't a true white in the game colors, so I grayed down my white a bit and I painted all the caps their signature red. Gilded Dendra. Do not drink the sap of this plant. The lips and veins will turn black as the blood succumbs to Dendra's miasma, a sure and painful way to die. The poison is so potent that even touching the leaves of the plant can be painful. I made these little cones so that I could form the petals around them and hold the shape. I tried putting a gloss on them to keep the fresh clay from sticking, but it didn't end up working the way I hoped. So instead, I put the cones on wires, and then I built the petals around those. This worked pretty well. These will get super glued on for more security later. Some thin leaves, which thankfully aren't killing me, and it's ready for paint. I really love how simple the color schemes are in this game, but how gorgeous everything looks. Green for the leaves and blue for the flowers, plus a tiny bit of golden yellow, and we're moving right along. Glowhorn. The glowhorn, or forest lantern, or pixie lamp, is phosphorescent, illuminating the trees that it grows under. Suspicious travelers avoid walking towards it, fearing that the faint lights will lure them to their demise. I knew I had to have something glow in the dark, so the glowhorn was absolutely necessary. They were pretty easy, just a skinny cone inside a bigger cone, and then drawing on the gill lines. The fun part will be in the painting. Time to pull out one of my glow-in-the-dark paints! As you saw in my Subnautica and Spike Snout videos, I have a lot of different colors available. I didn't gray down the white enough on this one, but honestly I don't mind too much. It will look cooler in the dark since the stems will reflect a little bit more, I hope. Tiny whitish dots, and the glowhorns are good to glow. You know me, I can't resist doing a bad pun. Gray Sandfire. Sandfire has a tough outer bark which has many useful properties. Some chew it as a form of dental hygiene, taking care not to swallow it as it can cause unpleasant stomach distress. The flame-like tendrils give off a smoky scent, adding to the impression of a roaring fire. This had such fun shapes. I couldn't resist adding it to my shelves. First, I made the little chubby flames to get a sense of how small they should be to fit in the bowl. This was really a project of drops. Even my blade fell out of my knife as I was cutting edges of the plant wrapping. Maybe I should get a new X-Acto. I've had this one for over a decade, I think. When I try to tighten it, it doesn't actually tighten anymore. Sorry it's out of focus, but now we have some nice sharp edges. I've mentioned before that I have a pretty hard time making gradients with acrylic, but this time I added a bit of the Liquitex Slow Dry stuff. I'll put a link in the description below, so that both colors could be mushed into each other more. I think it worked pretty well. Once again, using my grayed down white for the wraps, and a tiny bit of darker gray for the bark lines. Mountain Astory promotes an aura of confidence and persuasiveness. The large cup-like flowers produce a stale, damp smell. Here's a really fun shape again. My idea here was to create the big cups like I did the round pots, and bake them and then make a petal skirt around the opening. What I didn't count on was how hard the leaves were going to be. I freehanded 5-lobed leaves and tried very hard to make it not look like a certain other 5-lobed leaf, and once they were baked, they started falling apart. I glued the lobes back on and decided to make a mold so I could cast them in resin. That would be so much stronger. I'm not sure where my footage went, but they looked so magical when they were clear like this. Once it was all baked, I added some more UV resin to attach the leaves to the stem. For the first time, super glue let me down. It didn't actually cure on the stem or on the resin. I was so confused. Green and orange, with a little bit darker orange inside the cup, and that's really the whole paint job. These are going a lot quicker than I thought. Pennybell. The leaves of the Pennybell are chewed by some for their hallucinogenic properties. However, it is highly addictive and can lead to sickness and death. It is also very, very cute. Why are so many deadly things so cute? We've got little bells and little hearts. It just makes you want to love it, and then I sculpted the tiny bells on a tiny ball tool and made some teeny tiny heart-shaped leaves. Lots of super glue later, and we have the leaves and bells in place. Thank goodness it did not betray me this time. Here's another one with the lovely gradient, but it's luckily a very easy gradient. I was able to accomplish it with sort of dry brushing. It was more of a wet dry brush than a dry dry brush, but it did work. Red Abony. The plant is said to uncover that which is hidden, including buried treasure and secret writings. The red Abony is extremely rare and not well studied. Blood has been spilt over this plant, which is where the red part of the name is believed to have come from, since, confusingly, the large flower is in fact blue. This plant is so cool! I loved that aha moment I had in the game. There's a specific use for this plant, and I'd been waiting to find it so that I could use it. All I knew was that I needed to find red Abony, but I had no information on it. When I finally got the book entry, it turns out I'd had the plant for several in-game days. I used a pen cap to cut out little half-moons in the petals so they'd fit nicely on the stem. Everything is a multi-purpose tool if you need it to be. It's a lovely blue, but also a little on the purple side, at least on my screen, but my first paint color was a little too much purple. So I went back with another wash to make it more blue, and painted the fun little light spots. Also, it looks like a stinking corpse lily. Yes, apparently that's its name. It's native to the rainforests of Sumatra and Borneo, and it made me giggle because it looks red, which fits more with the name Red Abony than the blue version. Also, the shape reminds me of Mountain Astory, which is cool too. It's like they took one plant and had two inspirations from it. Sheepsnap. The sheepsnap is thought to bring good fortune when prepared correctly. The green seed pods of the sheepsnap have a hard outer shell and sound hollow when tapped. To the south, they call this plant bulbs of Bayonne. This one is just so cute. Who doesn't want a stalk of little green balloons? Originally, I was going to make the pods with little balls of aluminum foil, but when I took a look at the size of the pot, I really didn't need it. They're small enough to be light, so I just made beads, baked them, and threaded them on the floral wire. It's pretty much all the same green, with tiny variations, so we'll go quickly through this one. Sour Bandy. The sour Bandy can help with memory recovery, especially if the memory has been deliberately sabotaged. The name of this plant derives from the fact that, although edible, the large stamen is extremely bitter to the taste. I love this one so much because it reminds me of another variety of corpse flower. Corpse flowers are so amazing. They're gigantic and they smell like rotting carrion, but they're absolutely gorgeous with their shapes and color. They're apparently very rare bloomers, so every time one blooms, it's a carrion-scented celebration. a very quick coat of bronze, and a little darker bronze for some weathering, and the watering can is ready to water. I'm so happy how this turned out, and with the little magnets I can fiddle with them during meetings, after working hours as a fun and relaxing activity, and definitely not an over-engineered fidget spinner alternative. I hope you like this project, and if you like plants and occult murders, please check out Strange Horticulture. This isn't a sponsored video, I just have a very selfish desire to chat with you all in the comments about how much I love this game and all of the plants. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.